Hi, everyone. I hope that everyone can hear me loud and clear. So I assume that you guys can hear me. So this is Jess. I'm the marketing from Nutanix for ASEAN. Thank you all for joining the webinar today. We are actually working with INFOPRO jointly to put together this webinar on how to revolutionize your digital banking transformation. So today there should be attendees from Indonesia, Philippines, and Malaysia. I know that things are not looking too good for some of the countries right now because of the pandemic. I'm based in Singapore, and we also face with the highest number of COVID cases in the past 10 months from a single cluster just yesterday, but staying positive and making the best of what we have as well. Nonetheless, because of these difficult times, all the more industries and organizations around the world has to work more relentlessly to innovate and find the most efficient and effective solution to win competition and emerge stronger at this time as well. And this, of course, includes the financial services industry. If you're not from the FSI industry, I'm sure some of the best practices would benefit you as well. So just to go through some housekeeping logistics, first point, this session is recorded and the recording will be shared with you in an email. You're muted upon entry. If you have any questions, please click raise your hand or key in your questions in the Q&A box, please, so that we can answer at the back end for you. So for the format of the presentation today, INFOPRO will go first, and after which Nutanix and jointly they will answer your questions. So please don't be shy and pose as many questions as you can. Without further ado, I would like to introduce EK Chong, the Chief Digital Officer of INFOPRO, to kickstart the session. EK, if you're ready, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jess. We are very delighted today to have ourselves be presented here together with Nutanix to share with you who is INFOPRO and how we actually support the banking industries. Okay. So, basically my name is EK. You can call me EK or Angkok. So basically I'm heading the digital transformation divisions in INFOPRO. So I deal with banks and financial institutions for the digital transformations. So should you have any needs or looking for somebody to discuss about the potentials of the transformations, so feel free to contact us. Okay. So do allow me to introduce about the company. So I will share a couple of slides on this. Okay. So who is INFOPRO? Basically, INFOPRO has been in the market for 34 years. Okay. So we started to actually focus on the enterprise banking for many years. And in the last decade, okay, we ventured into digital customer experience, cloud banking, and recently we set up our own AI-driven banking divisions, where we actually created a AI innovation labs with our internal data scientists to actually explore how to bring the benefits of automations using the artificial intelligence like machine learning, deep learning, and natural language processing to improve the overall banking processes. And then I will share a little bit more later. Okay. As a company, as a software house, actually we have strong belief in the quality. That's why we get ourselves appraised at the CMMI level 5. So we are the only companies in Malaysia which has been certified at this level, the highest maturity. Okay. And together we have been actually certified under the ISO 9001 for more than 20 years. Okay. And we are a Malaysian company, so to say, but we have a very strong global footprint. Okay. So we have implemented in 100 over customers across 32 countries. So to us, we have a domestic know-how not only for Malaysia, but across the Asia Pacific. Okay. So we have our regional office in China, Singapore, as well as Dubai to facilitate our supports to different customer segments. Okay. Our award-winning AI-driven digital banking platforms, okay, has been well recognized by industries. Okay, we has been named as the best Islamic financial software provider by World Islamic Fintech Awards, and also best core banking provider in Banking Tech Awards, which is actually given by Fintech Futures in UK. Okay. what is inside our AI-driven digital banking platforms? We actually built, we assemble the AI technologies to bundle together with our entire next generation core banking frameworks, which on top we build different products. Okay, in that we actually cut it up into the 4 pillars, which is core banking products, digital customer experience products, risks and management, and also compliance related products, as well as AI and analytics as the core. Okay, so this is how you can bring the advantage of the technologies into your current ecosystems, introducing the efficiency brought to you by not only data-driven or AI-driven capabilities, but how a more efficient, seamless integration from the analytics into various use cases and processes within the banks. Now, we all know that the era of digital banks is here. Okay, since Jazz is from Singapore, he's probably fully aware that there has been Singapore already issued 4 new digital bank licenses, right? So, and it is not only Singapore, it actually happens closer to our home countries, in Southeast Asia, in Asia Pacific, and globally as well. So people are demanding today. So the consumer is looking for something that is fully digital, more engaged, more efficient, and more innovative. So how can we bring this value closer to our customers to win our consumers? Okay. So if you look at the landscape today, the digital banks started to evolve in Europe and later on Northern Americas and Southern America, and gradually coming into Middle East, and now closer to home. So we have it in APAC, okay? And it is not too far from us. So you can see all these names are just surrounding us. There are Airstar and Jaban in Hong Kong, Discarted and Como in Philippines, and Tomorrow in Thailand and also Indonesia. So these are all the names, okay, scattered around Southeast Asia, okay. So, and different jurisdictions already taken actions, okay. We see that Hong Kong has already spearheaded for the issuance of 8 digital bank licenses, followed by Singapore, and Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia are actually on their way to issue new digital banks licenses, okay. And what does this mean? This means more competitions, and how does it affect all the incumbents or existing banks, and how can we help you, whether you are looking at setting out a new challenger banks, or you are looking at you are the incumbent banks which looking at how to actually still be relevant in the competitions, okay. So typically, what driving a better digital customer experience from a digital banks is that, okay, it typically designed with a digital first experience, okay, with a very hyper personalized customers experience and engagements, okay, to be able to build an ecosystems that bring along your partner services or your value add services to offer to your customers, okay, so they can do all their dealing with the banks all under the same platforms without going in and out to another. More importantly for today, especially during the major crisis of pandemics, okay, it accelerates the needs for the customer onboarding using eKYCs. Okay, so eKYC become just like a solution to address this back. Is actually pushing all the consumers from physical dealing to a cashless and online consumers, okay, and bank has to move also on this together with this trending, okay. And last but the most important one is to be able to launch an innovative products, okay, according to the market demand faster, okay. So no longer take ages for you to plan and test and roll out, but with the technologies, with the agiles and CI/CD's capabilities, we will be able to push out the new features, new updates at the faster speed, okay. That will help you to actually win against your consumers faster, okay. Now, what are the options available for the incumbent banks today by looking at so many new entrants entering into the market? Okay, Typically, like from a studies shared by Boston's consulting group, okay, banks typically have taken 3 different choices. One is try to digitalize yourself. Okay, so with what you already have, which you think is not good enough, you try to actually digitalize it to the next maturity level to bring in more efficiencies in your digital customers experience. Okay, from that example is Maybank Malaysia, as Maybank is one of the biggest banks in these regions where they have a very well-known Maybank to You apps and internet banking. From there, that is insufficient because it is still perceived as too traditional, and they introduce a new MAE or May apps, which is more payment driven, and then it's an ecosystem based that it actually brings on board their partner services that you can actually purchase tickets within the Maybank apps itself. So, and these apps runs in parallel together with the existing mobile banking apps Maybank to You. Okay, so this is what we call bi-model strategies. So we can help you to introduce something that very innovative while you can keep your existing business as usual with minimal interruptions. Okay, and that will give you a minimal risk, but at the same time will maximize your potentials in actually venture into the new market. Okay, okay. And next, the second option is launch a digital challenger banks together with partners. Now we see in these regions a lot of partnerships and consortiums. For instance, Standard Chartered set up this MOX in Hong Kong in collaborations or partnership with Hong Kong Telecom and many other consortiums. So with that, okay, they put up a new plans, a new banks for a different strategies. Okay. And thirdly is actually to establish a secondary brand. Okay, you can see that okay, UOB actually created tomorrow for them to venture into a greenfield new markets with a cost-effective lean operations model. So UOB has been implemented in Thailand, in Indonesia. So this is the strategy for a regional banks to actually expand business into a new markets quickly with purely virtual banks without the hassles of the expensive expenses on the physical brick and mortars and things like that. Similarly, Digibank was actually they was the first one who actually set up a virtual banks in India and Indonesia. Okay, so we can see there are more and more such secondary brandings actually being created by a very established banks to venture into a new market. And very often you can see that these banks are typically start with something very niche and very simple products. Okay, so they do not compete directly with their main business because their strategy are different, their targeted segments are different, their objective is also different. Okay, so this is how we can help you to actually set up either a full banks with a very slim core, lightweight, but it's a purposely designed for a digital banks to capture maybe a financial inclusion agenda or whatsoever. Okay, or on the other hand is we can help you to also look into how to create a second bi-model strategies to run in parallel together with what you have today with a minimal interruptions to your business as usual. Potentially, you can introduce some new simple products end-to-end, not only from the mobile banking apps, but link up to a simple core and simple analytics, which is purposely designed for these new segments. So in that case, you can run in parallel with your existing infrastructures without much interruptions. Okay, so what we bring to you is AI-driven digital banking. We have over 50 modules within our digital banking platforms. Okay, that is helping you to actually assemble the customer experience. So you probably need a mobile app for a mobile first experience, and you can design how to onboard your fintech partners to create your partner ecosystems. Okay, and at the middle tiers, okay, we bring to you the complete core banking requirements and functionalities together with the governance, risk, and compliance requirements. Okay, that allowing you to actually operate fully for a full bank's operations. As far if you want to run in the slim bi-model options, we can actually take up certain features and then make it simple and if effective for you to roll out a new branding with your buy model strategies. Okay, and underneath it's the data processing engines. So this is the core of the system where it actually built in place with the data capabilities, so helps you to do the analytics and it brings to you the AI, so helps you to automate processes. Okay, so this we name it as the new DNA for the leading digital banks. So our objective is to see how can we help existing incumbent banks to digitalize themselves, putting as much as this DNA into your organization with minimal interruptions to your existing business. And at the same time, for those new applicants who wanted to set up new banks, so we have one-stop solution for you. So underlying our technology is the AI, and then also the ability to run on clouds and also hybrid clouds, or also all fully on-premise together with a Nutanix powerful servers. Okay, and you can run, you can have a range of API to help you to connect third-party services. It was designed with agile and DevOps frameworks together with a flexible product factories, with the aim to help you to go to market faster without the hassles of building or development or testing, and the lengthy process can be shortened. So we have over 50 modules. Okay, we are flexible and it is fully configurable and modularized. Okay, so basically you can pick and choose the relevant modules for you. Okay, we can discuss with you and see how we can help you. So not necessary to look into the full bank. So we can help you to optimize or digitalize, either digitalize your front end or digitalize your core services for fully automated, or digitalize your analytics capability. So this is how we can actually position and helps you to actually brings you from your current stakes to the next level. Okay. So our AI process is actually being implemented from the front office to the middle office to the back office. How we do this is because we build in place a AI as a service platforms bundled together with our entire solutions. Okay, so all the models that we built, let's say for instance, AI credit scoring, AI false positive detection for AML, and customers engagements, analytics, and things like that, is actually being exposed, created as an API to be used by the systems calling from the front office, middle office, and back office. So it is not only used within our systems, it can also be consumed by your existing system. So with a complex banking ecosystem infrastructure today, so you can actually maximize your investment in these platforms. Okay. So basically, we are looking at to improve your customer engagement, lowering your operating expenses by automating many of the processes as much as possible, and at the same time enhancing your efficiencies in operations. Okay. So INFOPRO is your right partner, is a reliable technology partner for you. Why? It's because we bring to you the leading technologies. Okay, we are able to bring to you the speed to the market, the domestic know-how, not only in Malaysia, but in this region as overall, and strong in compliance, especially if you are starting out a new greenfield business. Okay, so we have all in place, including central bank reporting, anti-money laundering, risk management, credit risk, market risk, and things like that are all in place. Okay, and most importantly is we are the right partners that can help you to build your establish your ecosystems to service your customer better. And with that, that is my last slide. I hope that we can hear from you. If you think that we can help you to digitalize or help you to transform from any levels, just let me know. And then we are very happy to actually have another session to discuss with you and see how to actually move on to the next steps. Okay, I'm done. Okay, so back to you, Adib.
All right, thank you, EK. So am I audible? I'm going to assume that I am actually audible.
Yeah, we can hear you, Adib.
All right, cool. Thanks for the confirmation. So, okay, so thank you guys. My name is Adib Rabbani. I'm the solution architect for Nutanix Malaysia. So before I start, so basically I have to apologize upfront because I'm not gonna turn on my video because my bandwidth currently is actually quite congested. I think this is expected due to COVID and a lot of people is actually working from home. So as the slide suggests, today we're going to look at database solution from Nutanix, especially geared towards transforming database services in your current organization, right? So there's going to be a video. So bear with me if the bandwidth is not sufficient. It's going to be quite laggy. All right, cool. So why are we today focusing more on databases, right? The simple reason is because database or data or information is actually the new oil. So this is something that we hear repeatedly, right? So data is actually a currency, it's the most valuable resources available for any individual or any companies or any organization today. With this data, you can actually monetize, you can actually improve the operation, you can improve the revenue, increase revenue, you can actually reduce operational efficiency. So that's the reason why we are actually focusing on data and information today. And you actually heard what EK presented. So a lot of customers actually going through digitization, and especially through the for the past 2 years, the COVID pandemic is actually accelerating all this transitioning to digital business. And you can actually see companies and technologies actually helping them to innovate faster, right? And because the rise of digital business, you can actually see AI and ML is actually being utilized to get deeper insight. And where these customers actually getting deeper insight is, the answer is obviously from the current database or the information that they have, right? But again, we also have to recognize the fact that databases also need to evolve, right? For the past 15, 30 years in terms of managing operation-wise or doing performance tuning, things like that, DB is not meeting the modern demands in terms of agility and also the scalability and also simply the speed of catering to business requirement. And you can actually see IT's organization and also the DBAs especially is actually overwhelmed with requests to create new instance, to actually expand database, to actually do things faster and better, right? And that's the reason why the next tag will actually tell us, right, why we are in the state we are today, because the problem is the databases are actually hurting, and simple reason is because in terms of speed, provisioning will actually take weeks, right? So it's actually common across multiple organization, enterprise, small, medium, or large enterprise. In terms of provisioning, this will actually easily take weeks, and at a certain extreme, really extreme cases, it can easily take months as well. And this is actually something is expected because you are actually going through multiple motion across multiple teams, where you can actually, with a simple request to get a DB stand up will actually need you to actually interface with the DB team, obviously with the infra team, the virtualization team, the network team, and the security team as well. So database are hurting in terms of time to actually to market, and the provisioning itself is actually very slow, right? The second challenges that we are seeing today is in terms of the amount of money that is actually spent to store data. Now, this is a survey that is actually done in the North America, obviously, and it's actually estimated about $56 billion is actually being utilized to actually spend on copy data. Now, but what's the reason why we have all this copy data in the first place? Now, if we go to any customers, we talk to any organization today, you actually see that all these organizations will have multiple copies of data, and they also have multiple database engine to begin with. right? So it's common to see one customer will actually run Oracle. They actually also run MySQL for another use cases. They also run MariaDB, right? And all these instances or all these database engine, you need to have multiple copies. Why? Obviously, one is for backup. The other copies is actually used for QA. Third is going to be QC, and maybe a fourth or fifth copy for test and dev, BI, intelligence, and so on. So it's estimated, right? The average size for one, the average copy for one database instance is going to be in the upwards of 10 to 12 copies. So imagine the amount of money or storage you need to actually store all this data. So that's the reason why the survey or the where we actually get this 56 billion is actually a recent IDC study of 500 North American organizations, right? And that's the reason why this figure actually come out. Okay, now moving on to the other challenges when it comes to database management or operation wise. So the database itself is actually growing, and due to organic growth and things like that. So we are actually seeing a 30%, upwards of 30% of growth in terms of database capacity, right? And this is simply because a lot of data is being stored, a lot of device, especially the IoT device, is actually generating more data, and it's actually estimated, right? In every 2 years, the data is going to be double every 2 years. So if your customer or your organization today have 1 terabyte of data, by the average law, in another 2 years, you're going to be store 2 times of your current data. Okay, so that's the reality today. Now, so, and this is something that is quite common, right? So, but let's take a quick look at some of the impact databases running on traditional infrastructure can have on IT and business itself, right? So, so what are the other issues that is actually hurting databases? First of all, the first thing that we actually have to recognize is the fact that all these databases is actually running on a complex 3-tier architecture or legacy architecture. So it's really, really complex. It's actually siloed, is utilizing or expecting a lot of maintenance, right? So when we say silo, it's common to see that the server team will have a separate team, the storage will have separate team, the network is actually have separate team, and you do have to organize or gel everything together to actually just run your databases today, right? And this is one of the reasons why the provisioning process is actually quite lengthy. And that's the reason why, in terms of go-to-market, a lot of customers actually exploring to deploy their databases on shadow IT or public cloud, for example, right? So this is something that is actually common, again, across many teams in the company organization today, right? Now, the other issues in terms of deploying databases in the current landscape is this is actually simply because the process itself is actually very slow. And if the provisioning process is slow, obviously the troubleshooting, the performance tuning itself is going to be very slow. So this translates into a lot of missed SLAs, and also once you miss SLAs, it's going to be a lot of lost revenue, right? So we also know that the fact that the most costs involved when it comes to downtime is actually when the database is actually down, right? So when the database is down, so there's a lot of revenue being lost, and we have to protect the database at all costs, right? So the other issue that we are seeing with the database today is the fact that the database is actually vulnerable. So it's actually needs a lot of protection. It needs a lot of fine tuning. It needs a lot of healing. It needs a lot of configuration to actually cover or protect the database. So this is actually translate into a lot of downtime and also poses security risks, right? So we have heard a lot of stories about data being exposed, be it in FSIs or different vertical industry. We also heard local customer, in fact, in Malaysia, who actually had to pay because their database system or systems actually infected by malware and ransomware, for example, right? So those are things that, again, hurting the database operation and also availability, right? So, so the other challenges that we are seeing is obviously is when it comes to cost, right? So cost, again and again, is going to be a very important factor to actually consider. So when you actually deploy database in a very complex architecture, it's going to be very expensive to maintain, to operate, to tune, to actually even to just scale or go to market with this kind of legacy infrastructure, right? So when it's expensive, obviously it's actually high capex and also will actually translate to high operational costs as well. Okay, so how would actually resolve all these problems? Now, obviously, we're going to resolve it with a solution, right? So the solution is actually a Nutanix solution for databases. So the product itself is actually called Nutanix Era, but we will not go into very specific in details. So the solution for Nutanix solution for databases is going to be able to resolve very complex deployment and also issues that was actually highlighted earlier. Sorry, let me go back. Right. So imagine today, this is your actual architecture. So you use a standard Microsoft SQL, Oracle, MySQL, or PostgreSQL. So any supported major database today, and hopefully all these databases actually virtualized. But the issue is, as you can see on the bottom layer, right? The infrastructure is actually very complex. You have your compute layer, all your servers, different flavors or different vendors, right? And also these servers are actually connected to fiber channel switches, and this again can have multiple bandwidth, multiple throughput, and from various different brands. And finally, all these compute layer is actually connected to the storage controller or the SAN storage, right? And this again will have different flavors depending on your availability or performance expectation, and you do have to factor in all these same architecture on your DR side, so making things even more complex. But what if we can actually simplify this, right? So that's the reason why we are on this webinar today. So we would actually want to learn, right? So from some of the past experience that, or our customer who actually went through the journey with us, so how they can actually better operate their database or transform their database in their environment today. Right? So imagine today, instead of having all this 3D architecture or all this complex infrastructure layer, so we can actually just converge everything, right, into a single platform. So you just use one platform to run all your databases today, right? And this is where Nutanix come to the picture. So all this platform is actually converged, combined into a single layer, which is something that we refer to as hyper-converged infrastructure, or in short, it's actually referred to as ACI. Okay, so and that's the infrastructure component. But what about the rest of the component, rights in terms of provisioning, protecting your databases, updating? So this is where you can actually turn your database into a service, right? So our DB as a service components offer a really cloud-like database service that can actually deliver the flexibility, the ease, the speed, and cost efficiency of a public cloud. And it will also help you to actually simplify and automate the operation from the standard database management lifecycle. So, and while giving you the flexibility, right, the choice of where you want to run your database and data or information today. So you can actually use the same architecture, you can actually use the same solution, and you actually deploy this database on whether it's going to be public cloud, whether it's going to be on your private cloud, or it's going to be on your on-premise hybrid cloud, whatever, right? So those are not important to us. We are actually pretty agnostic when it comes to the deployment mode, but you do have the ability to actually pick and choose your preferred delivery model. Okay. Now, so in a nutshell, right? So what is the Nutanix solution for database? So imagine today. So this is what you have. So your database is really reflected on top, illustrated on top. So it can be multiple flavors. It's not important. You can actually run MySQL. You can actually run Oracle, MariaDB, Postgres, or even SAP HANA, right? So, but the thing that we actually offer is the DB as a service capabilities, right? So now you can actually provision, right? Provision database in automated deployment mode, right? So gone are the days where system administrator will actually need to coordinate between multiple teams to be able to just deploy Oracle RAC configuration across multiple nodes, or even Microsoft SQL across multiple geographic with passive active configuration. Those are not needed anymore. As one guy can actually just click through and we'll be able to actually provision a very complex database deployment model by using our Nutanix DB as a service solution, right? And also, not only we actually automate the provisioning process, you can actually also perform the standard lifecycle management such as patching, upgrading, right? So if let's say you have a different patch train for your Microsoft SQL, you want to test before you do it or deploy that in a particular production environment. So all this patching upgrade can also be automated. It's going to be a one-click kind of patching upgrade process. So it's going to be a very seamless kind of thing to actually deploy in your environment, right? So we covered the provisioning process. We also covered the day 2, which is covering the patching upgrading. So what happened if you actually need to do backup or protecting your database? So again, you use the same solution, right? So Nutanix DB as a service solution, you can actually do cloning. You can actually create a clone and restore from that particular clone. You can actually backup. You can actually send the backup across your DR site by using a single platform. Okay, imagine today if you have a request from your business user, for example, right? The business user asks to maybe I want to restore, right, so one particular instance or database to a specific point in time, right? So I want to be able to restore my SQL server to 17 January 2021 at this particular 3:20 a.m. in the morning. So imagine with your current infrastructure and the setup today, how easy or how complex are you going to be able to fulfill that request? But for the solution that we offer today, is simply going to be a calendar-based kind of restore request. You just click and choose which date. You can click and choose which transaction or which point in time you want to restore to, right? So when you want to do restore, you can also even specify, right? So whether you want to restore to override this database instance, whether you want to restore on another location for you actually to do testing, things like that. So those are something that is actually highly configurable. Okay. So again, the one platform in terms of databases engine that we support today. So we do support Oracle, the standard Microsoft SQL, MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB, and the latest version is of our solution will actually support SAP HANA as well. And all these multiple database engine will actually run on our hyper-converged platform, right? So those are the standard bread and butter offering from Nutanix, right? So why we are offering this? First of all, because we actually think, we also believe that this will actually give a lot of value, and it's actually very comprehensive. You can actually see all these points that is actually highlighted in the slide. So you can actually go through and do cost governance. You can actually do security compliance. If let's say you want to patch to specific patch version and if there's a 0-day exploit that you want to actually patch to, so you can actually just use the same tool, and before you actually deploy this particular database, you can actually do a cost accounting and show back, right? You can actually understand, before I deploy this Oracle rack on this particular on-premise or public cloud, this is going to be the cost for me to actually deploy this, right? So those are some of the values. I will not go through in very detail because I think it's going to be beyond the scope of this session, right? So again, something that I actually covered earlier. So when it comes to deployment choice, you do have option whether you want to deploy this on-premise on your HCI or Nutanix AI solution, or whether you want to actually build a hybrid cloud or multi-cloud solution where you have certain workload running on-premise or certain workload running on public cloud. So again, those are just a deployment mode that we can actually support. There's no issues in terms of which one you actually prefer to. Right. So what's the value for the solution from Nutanix today when it comes to automating or going through DB as a service, right? So the first value is obviously it's going to be very simple. Now, imagine, right? So if you want to do provisioning, patching, upgrade, clones, backup NDR, so you don't need to know different technology. You don't need to navigate through different interface or console. So you just focus on one console, and anyone who can have basic IT knowledge will actually be able to do all these things without heavily understanding what is the infrastructure looks like, what is the hypervisor platform, what is the database engine looks like. So everything can actually be automated and simplified when it comes to Nutanix solution for database today, right? So the other value that we actually offer is actually makes life faster when it comes to deploying, right? So everything is actually automated. So with one click, within minutes, the database is going to be provisioned. So we have a demo. So you can actually go through to go to Google or any preferred search engine. You can just search for Nutanix test drive. So you can actually go through the test drive and actually test this out. right? And you can actually provision a database, be it how many complex scenarios there is you can actually think of. So the operation is going to be way faster than the traditional manual way of the scripted or the template way. Okay, and it's going to be very, very simple again, and it's also fast. Now, one of the things that I like with the solution is the fact that when I want to deploy a very complex or correct environment, for example, right? So the question that I'm expected to answer is only maybe 4 or 5 questions. So it's just going to be asking me what's the instance name, what's the size of the storage capacity, what's the virtual machine name, and what's the template that you want to use for. So once you select all these 5 or 6 different questions, everything will be automated and deployed for you according to the best practice for all the infrastructure layer component. For example, I want to deploy Oracle Rack on a VMware hypervisor, right? So the hypervisor best practices in terms of performance is taken care of. The Oracle configuration is actually taken care of as well. And if this is actually provisioned on Nutanix on-premise solution, the infrastructure when it comes to performance and best practices is also applied. So you don't need to cover a lot of things. Just select what database that you want, what's the space, what's the name, and you're done, right? So the obviously when it comes to faster, right? So you can actually also scale performance as when demand increases. So one of the ways we actually provide value is the ability to scale database performance and capacity linearly. So as you put on more physical server or something that we refer to as node. So as you put in one node at a time, you can actually scale the performance as well, right? So you can deploy very fast. So this is something that you can actually deploy within days, hours, or minutes even, right? And as you add more physical server or a node in the environment, the performance will actually scale linearly. So if one node gives you, for example, 10,000 transactions per minute kind of performance, the second node will give you again 10,000 transactions per minute in terms of performance, right? So it's actually very, very predictable when it comes to performance, right? So let's go through this like that. Now, the final, I believe, right? So when it comes to the final value that we actually bring to the table is it's actually the solution itself is actually highly available, right? Why we have that? Because it's actually running on the core layer is still ACI. The core layer is still ACI. So the ACI, the infrastructure layer is actually very simple. So you have all these product alerts built in. All the upgrades actually non-disruptive. You can actually do a rolling upgrades across nodes. All your database is will be covered as well, and there's no performance loss once you run on this architecture. Okay, right. So sorry. So that's the second last value. So the last value is actually the solution itself is actually very secure, right? So you have unified security across all databases. So you can even perform micro-segmentation where you can actually isolate network traffic across east and west traffic to isolate malware or ransomware affected virtual machine or databases, right? So this is something that we actually built in and factor inside the solution by default. Okay. Now, in a nutshell, so why is Nutanix solution for database? It's actually very efficient. So talk to us to understand more why we actually put this claim out. So this is something that we actually do a lot of studies with existing and future prospect. So by deploying a solution or database on Nutanix platform with the Nutanix Dba as a service offering, you can actually look at reduced DB license costs by as much as 50%. Now, obviously, this is a marketing slide. It won't actually be applicable across all companies or enterprise organizations out there, but some of our customers do enjoy upwards of 50% of licensing cost saving in terms of DB license, right? But something that we actually see time and time again is, which is actually very, very true, is the slashing of storage capex cost, right? So this is something that we see a lot. So we are looking at around the average is about 6x. So a lot of enterprise that we actually run on Nutanix platform, they say that once they run their DB on Nutanix platform with the DB as a service, they are actually reduce the consumption of their storage by as much as 6x. Okay, and finally, the last efficiency model that we are referring to is the Dba efficiency. So gone are the days where a simple one request to actually restore or provision database Virtual machine will actually take weeks because you need to coordinate multiple teams, or even with the advent of automation solution that, for example, some of our automation solution that alone will also help in such a way, but it's not as easy as deploying this on a Nutanix DBA as free. Okay, so I guess that's the last of my slide. So let me check whether there's a Q&A. Oh, so everything is actually answered already. All right, cool. So if there's no further questions, so what will happen?
Hey, Abid.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I think we can spend like 10 minutes to answer some of the questions together with EK.
Right.
I think we can explain further live would be good as well.
Okay. All right.
EK, you're ready?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
okay.
Abid, you don't have any other slides, right?
No, that's this is actually mine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, if you're okay, I can give answers to Nanang first on one of the questions that he asked in the FAQ.
Go ahead.
Okay, basically, let me read out the questions. He put up 3 questions here. So number 1 is, how will our digital strategy adapt to protect the customers and banks' financial health from data breaches and identity fraud? Okay, so basically when we go into digitals, we are looking at more and more avenue for allowing customers or empowering customers to be able to onboard themselves. So for the self-onboarding, that's why a lot of places or countries started to introduce the capability on the eKYC. With the use of eKYCs, they are using sophisticated AI technologies to perform validations and verifications of the person is deemed who he actually referred to. Okay, so what it does is they performs a complicated or ID proving, okay, to check and make sure that your ID cards or driving license or national IDs or any ID cards that you presented are originals, and also it is actually of your own. So he may match your faces, he can perform facial recognitions to compare against, okay, the persons that actually presented on the video. Okay, beyond this, in some other country, it depends on the readiness of the eKYCs and also the IDs and environments. Okay, so in some countries that do not have such capability, what happens is they actually can perform through a video streaming. So you can do a video call with your customers, between your customers and your internal bankers to verify the customers, okay, in order to actually allow them to onboard themselves. So these are actually some of the interim options available. Okay, if you look into the ones that use in the Americas compared to Europe's, compared to Asia Pacific, it is slightly different from the geographical that you actually implementing the applications. Okay, but having said that, the technology is evolving. Okay, the ability for the technology to detect the fraud for the identities, the fake identity is evolving also at the same time. Okay. The second question is, how are our data analytics solution ready to deliver a personalized digital banking experience to our customers? This question is pretty straightforward. Okay, how are we ready to provide a personalized digital banking experience? Yes, the answer is yes. If you compare against the new age or new digital bank or new digital challenger banks, they're really different in terms of your customer engagements, your experience with the apps itself, the mobile banking experience, the banking experience itself, because of a few strategies that they took. Okay, with the capability to do the analytics today, bank have a massive data about the customers. So from the data, he can create and uncover certain insights to understand the customer better. From there, you will be able to introduce a lot of personalized experience that will actually link you up to a call to actions kind of features that you can actually put in place in your banking apps. So what happens is, if a customer is having a cash flow problems, you can look into their credit behavior, or if they are good customers, potentially you can actually offer them a quick cash or maybe a personal loans with a pre-approved and pre-disbursed applications. So this is actually shortened the hassles for them to actually go to actually request or apply for new loans. And because you know them, they has been banked with you for a very long time. And then so you can add certain contextual when you are dealing with the customers in your apps. Okay, so that let's say for instance, when you talk about Indonesia, for instance, Indonesia is a big market with a very high population, which is over 270 millions of populations. Okay, in that kind of environments with a high financial inclusions kind of opportunities, so we are able to actually provide a way to help you to guide the customers for better savings, to improve or to cultivate the savings behavior. So because we know how they actually use the cash, or they have very little knowledge or educations on how to manage their cash, but the apps can serve as a financial coach. So you can put out a series of programs by being able to profile the customers and actually put them into the program and provide a interactive guidance for them towards creating more savings from in short terms as well as long term. Okay, so this is all available in today's market. Typically, you will see many of the advanced mobile banking apps comes with data insights, comes with personalized advisory, comes with recommendation, automation, and things like that based on the customer behavior. So this is the next level of customer experience that actually we are dealing with. Okay. Now the third question is asking about how will we improve the financial lives of our clients. Perhaps I already answered in the second question just now. So by actually improving the financial literacy through the actually day-to-day interacting with the apps, okay, with a certain program in place. So that actually indirectly helping to improve the customer's financial health. Okay. I hope I answer your question, Nanan. Okay, that's all for now. Okay.
All right. So thank you, Ike. So I think I'm gonna attempt to answer some of the questions. I think there's quite a fair bit. Let's recap some of the question that was actually asked earlier. So there's a question from Tech Hawat Lau. So the question is this under Nutanix era with a different set of license? Yes, you're absolutely spot on about that. So this is actually the Dba as a service. It's actually run the solution set is actually Nutanix era. So you do need to actually add on a different set of license to actually do the Dba as a service component. The good thing is that the license actually there's two separate metrics depending on your requirement. So we actually license either on the vCPU model or the CPU core model. So it depends on the environment, right? So if your environment is actually very small with 1 or 2 virtual machines with 4 vCPUs, so obviously it makes more sense to actually go with the vCPU's license scheme. But if your environment is actually consisted of hundreds of virtual machines that is actually exclusively or is actually running databases, so obviously the best approach is to actually license that based on number of cores. Okay, so hopefully that will actually cover that question. How about the license included renewal? So this, I think my colleague Wai Hing has actually covered that question. So basically the licensing or the software license from Nutanix moving forward, or has been like that for the past 1 or 2 years, it's actually based on subscription model. So you do have option to actually select your duration, right? So you can actually very granular. But the idea is if in any event, right? So you feel that the software is not up to your liking, so you can actually decide not to renew the license, right? So that's one with the flexibility that is actually provided by subscription-based license. Public cloud, yes, Wai Hing answered that correctly. So spot on. So we actually support AWS as of now. So Azure is actually in the roadmap. So I think we have early access. It's going to be GA quite soon. All right. So from Kiagus Fauzi, is the license is actually yearly renewal, or because it's actually based on subscription? So there's no perpetual license being offered as Nutanix as a company has transitioned to a subscription-based model. Okay, so what is the open question? So there's a question from Michael Dennis Bello. So I'm not sure whether this is a question directed to EK or Nutanix or myself. So the question is, do you have existing bank client here in the Philippines? I'm gonna answer on behalf of Nutanix first. Maybe Ike can actually cover on his portion. So we do have quite a fair bit of bank who's actually running on Nutanix in Philippines. The one that I can easily recall is actually Maybank Philippines. The rest, I'm not sure whether is still, because I don't cover ASEAN. So those are things that can actually be called. So maybe Ike, you want to cover that as well?
Yeah, thank you, Adib. So basically, we have several customers in Philippines. So I think customers like Sterling Bank of Asia is using our full solutions, and we are actually covering some of the savings banks and rural banks in Philippines. So if you have any needs, okay, we can discuss offline on how to move forward.
All right, great. So I'll go to the next question by Tech Quite Loud. So I think this is in regards to the last slide that I actually presented. So how do you actually reduce DB licensing costs by as much as 2x? So there's multiple methods to do it. So obviously we need to actually do some level of assessment and discovery. So we have actually done this in multiple, for example, central bank, very large financial institution, where we can actually go and study the environment. We can actually list down all the DB clusters, so we can actually optimize in terms of how to actually create or optimize the infrastructure cost first. Therefore, by optimizing the infrastructure, reducing costs, running on a higher CPU clock speed, for example. So this is where some of the cost savings can be realized. So the other components to that is some of the capabilities in ERA also include protection, replication, and configuration of protection across multiple domain, and also the ability to actually do data masking. So some of this functionality can actually be ported over to ERA instead of buying additional license from your your database as well. So this is quite comprehensive in terms of questions. So I don't think we have enough time to actually cover a lot of the mechanism that is actually available to us to actually reduce DB licensing costs. But do get in touch with us, or Raymond or Jess after this session. We do have quite a fair bit of arsenal in our tool, right? Right. So hopefully that answered the question. All right. So very quickly, is Nutanix solution for private cloud really as agile as public cloud? And how? Well, the base underlying layer is actually still hyper-converged infrastructure, right? So, and when we say it's agile, the fact that most of the public cloud provided today, they don't actually use any SAN storage or a 3-tier or legacy infrastructure, right? So they use some form of hyper-converged infrastructure, and the reason being because it's the best in terms of performance, it's the best in terms of agility, and also the best in terms of scalability, right? So you can go to Google, you can actually YouTube, search for Google data center. They don't have SAN storage. They only use server-based solution, and the reason is because it's more agile and hardware is actually designed for failure. And once it fails, you can actually quickly switch over to the next surviving node without any impact to the business. That's one. Again, I'll cover this very quickly because I think the first question alone easily can actually take 20-30 minutes in the technical bootcamp. The second question is, are private cloud and hyper-converged the same thing? No. The answer from my perspective is no. Private cloud is just a model of deployment model, right? So in your enterprise today, but most or the best solution to actually deploy your private cloud is actually on the HCI platform, right? So even though I'm from Nutanix, so it has to be HCI regardless of brand, but obviously I would want that to be Nutanix hyper-converged solution. The reason because of it's the best in terms of scalability and agility, right? So how Nutanix solution for secure is, okay, so I'm going to assume that this is actually asking about security, right? So one of the advantage of the Nutanix security solution is all the solution that is actually shipped when it comes to Nutanix, right? It's actually hardened from factory by default, okay? So all these the standard security templates actually built in. So when we actually ship the product out, everything is actually built and hardened by default to a certain standard. Okay, I can't recall what's the actual standard. It slipped my mind at the moment. But if the event, right, so because you are actually in a financial industry or you're in the hospital industry where you actually need to comply to certain PCI DSS or HIPAA, HIPAA, whatever, right? So those are something you can actually just further fine tune. And we do include all these template, security template guideline. So in the event that you have to go and answer to your auditor, right? So what is actually configured in your infrastructure today is a simple export in a human readable format, right? And you can actually fine tune this format and configure according to your actual security compliance. Okay, but I understand that I can't give this justice because again, security is actually a very big concern and it's actually one of our focus area in Nutanix platform, right? So if you do need to actually expand this conversation, do let us know. Get in touch with either Jess or Raymond or Wai-Hing moving forward. Okay, so I guess that's all for now. So Jess, if you don't mind, I'll cover the slide deck. So do help us to improve and complete the survey. So let us know what can actually be improved. What do you actually want to learn and hear more from us? Maybe you want to see demo, things like that. Do let us know in terms of the from the survey form, right? So if you need to contact us for further follow-up session, get in touch with Raymond or even EK or Jess to actually organize a one-to-one session or customized session. But if you do need to really understand a specific technology, let us know upfront. So when we do have that one-to-one session with you, it's going to be more fruitful for you, right? So again, so if whatever session that I actually presented earlier, you want to actually see whether that is actually will be able to hold water, or you want to test whether what I say is true. So there's a link, or you can actually go to any search engine. You can just search for Nutanix test drive. So there's multiple use cases where you can actually test and assess this functionality, right? So from the Dba as a service, from security, so whatever. So the only gotchas or limitation or prerequisite for that test drive is you are only limited for 4 hours. So once you are done, after that 4 hours, it's going to be reformatted. So don't put in your actual production data or your own personal data, right? For the test. All right. So I guess that's all for us from for today. So any Jess, anything?
I think it's cool. Thanks, Adib.
All right. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you guys actually spend your time with us today. I understand this is going to be a lockdown period for a lot of customers, but so again, thank you very much. So I think the slide deck and the content will actually be forwarded after the event, post event. All right. Again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Adib. Thanks, EK, for the presentation today. If you guys have any questions, please do contact us. We'll end the session now. Thank you.
Okay.